Well, I do think the Sussex overdrive is unbelievable, but I mean, I don't think that he is going to get back in, which showed that he is very commercially minded, which we'll get into later on, which
Yeah.
makes it impossible for him. And of course, Meghan wouldn't come back to Britain.
Harry and Meghan the other side, smiling and all the rest of it.
Is that Meghan has got no real income anymore. She's finished. The
Right.
Netflix series is over. There's no great podcast. They don't generate any money. And I don't see where she is going from here. I think she has a major problem.
There are moments when a public image doesn't just crack, it explodes into pieces. And according to Tom Bauer, that explosion has already happened.
It was Meghan speaking, and now we know it's Meghan speaking again. And so this isn't because the book contains that her brand was in great trouble. American Riviera Orchard, that she had allegedly nicked the idea. She wanted wealth and she wanted fame. And she targeted, there's no doubt she targeted Harry.
And that was very critical because at that moment last year, she was about to promote her Netflix series and didn't want to, firstly, be seen with Harry, and secondly, didn't want to go somewhere where she'd appear cheap. Are declining. I think that his reputation is somewhat toxic. And I think Invictus is his only lifeline. And that's what she used as a weapon at the time. So there were quite a few things about her personal life. I'll work them into another book, I think. Meghan didn't like the surname Mountbatten Windsor. If you remember, in her first lifestyle series with Meghan with them forever, she says to Carling that her surname isn't Markle but Sussex. And she was desperate to get it. She said, we never had a proper surname. And of course they did.
For years, Meghan Markle crafted her image like a perfect movie script, filled with pain, injustice, and misunderstood brilliance. Every headline, every interview, every tear seemed designed to build sympathy. But Bauer, one of the most feared biographers in the world, says the story's over.
By not telling the palace what she's going to do. And I think the most interesting story is the Reitman story. Reitman's is like a Marks and Spencer's in Canada.
In Revenge, you talk about how Meghan's lack of knowledge about British history meant she could not understand that Diana had won the public's affection.
She was warned before she married what the nature of being Harry's wife and part of the royal family would be, and the nature of how she ignored all that advice for two reasons. One is she really did believe she could do what she wanted. And secondly, I don't believe she ever intended to stay. She always intended to take the title, take the connections and get back to California.
And the truth has finally caught up. His new revelations don't just point out contradictions, they expose an entire system. A system built on emotional marketing, image control, and rewriting history until it sells. He claims Meghan didn't just stretch the truth, she rebuilt it from scratch. She monetized royal connections, exaggerated hardships, cut off allies who didn't fit her narrative, and played the victim every time her own moves backfired. Now, the illusion's breaking apart right in front of everyone. Bauer calls this the collapse of the fantasy, the moment when the mask slips and refuses to go back on. He says the web of stories is unraveling, and the receipts are finally out in the open. And when Tom Bauer speaks, people in power listen.
To suit Meghan's agenda, and Meghan's living with Meghan is very different than living with Kate and William. Meghan has a completely different attitude, and I think California has a different attitude. So I think we're now seeing a different Harry, and to his misfortune, it's not a Harry that appeals to the same sort of people in the same numbers as previously.
He's not just another talking head throwing opinions around. He's the guy who's been tearing down billionaires, prime ministers, and royals for decades. His investigations don't just ruffle feathers, they destroy entire PR machines. And this time, he's turning that same sharp lens straight at Meghan Markle. And here's the wild detail everyone forgets. Meghan and Harry, who threatened to sue anyone that so much as cracks a joke about them, never sued Tom Bauer, not once. They've gone after tabloids, comedians, even social media users.
What Meghan never really understood, probably not even now, is that when she was cheered as a working royal, it wasn't because she was Meghan Markle, it was because she represented British royalty.
But when it comes to Bauer, silence. Why? Because he's the one person who documents everything. He doesn't rely on gossip or headlines. He's got witnesses, emails, receipts, and timelines to back it all up. And that's exactly what makes him dangerous. Bauer doesn't play emotional games or exaggerate for drama. His strength comes from being cold, clinical, and brutally factual. When he says something isn't true, he doesn't just say it, he proves it. Documents, photos, first-hand sources, it's all there. So when Bauer speaks, even Meghan's fiercest defenders know they can't just roll their eyes and dismiss it.
I think there was that, but I've got to tell you, my research for my new book, the number of times she was warned before she married what the nature of being Harry's wife and part of the royal family would be, and the nature of how she ignored all that advice, for two reasons. One is she really did believe she could do what she wanted.
That's why his latest statements hit like a hammer. These aren't fan theories or clickbait rumors, they're confirmations. And according to Bauer, the real downfall started with something shocking: Meghan and Harry's decision to monetize the Queen's own childhood nickname. He calls it one of the lowest moves they ever made, and the public outrage showed exactly why. Bauer revealed that Meghan and Harry bought the Lilibet domain before even telling the Queen about their daughter's birth. That nickname wasn't some trendy baby name. It was sacred. It came from the Queen's inner circle, used only by her parents, her husband, and the few people she trusted most. Yet the Sussexes allegedly turned it into a branding opportunity.
See, Meghan loves money. Meghan's very commercial. She doesn't want to be poor. And then having got all that, she then saw how she needed a consort, a husband who's going to take her to the next stage. And she was on a manhunt, there's no doubt. I mean, there's nothing wrong with being on a manhunt. There are women hunts too, but I mean, she was determined.
When Harry claimed he'd asked the Queen for permission, the palace finally stepped in and told the BBC the truth. He didn't ask, he announced it. The Queen was furious. And for the palace to publicly contradict him, that almost never happens. When Harry tried threatening legal action to force the BBC to retract, the palace refused to budge. They told the BBC, "Do not apologize, what we said is true." According to Bauer, that was the breaking point, the moment the royal image cracked for good. Because that single act didn't just expose disrespect, it revealed exactly how Meghan and Harry viewed the monarchy as a marketing tool, and from that day on, their credibility started to crumble fast. Tom Bauer says the real story begins with how Meghan treated her own father, and not because it's emotional, but because the facts just don't add up. Meghan painted this picture of a lonely, struggling childhood, eating cheap meals, scraping by, and growing up without support. It sounded touching, like a movie script, but Bauer says that version couldn't be further from the truth.
She is desperate to be seen,
Yeah.
and that's why she turned up. So I think she has a major problem, financially and professionally. And I think that Harry has a problem.
The reality: Thomas Markle was the opposite of absent. He paid for her elite private schooling, ballet lessons, acting classes, photography equipment, and even her car. He picked her up from school, drove her to auditions, covered her university bills, and funded every dream she wanted to chase. Meghan didn't grow up poor. She grew up privileged, supported, and surrounded by opportunities most kids could only dream of. Then came one of the biggest red flags: Meghan's famous Procter & Gamble soap commercial story. The tale that made her sound like a born activist, fighting sexism as a child. But Bauer's research found no record of it ever happening that way. No letters, no responses, no proof. Her own father admitted he never even mailed such a letter.
To create her own brand and image in the whole Netflix series of lifestyle series. She was told she had to give up being the wicked witch in terms of the royal family. She should put that all behind her and not mention them, because people want to see her, not all the time complaining. She couldn't resist, because in the end, one of Meghan's many deficiencies is she has nothing to say. There's no originality.
According to Bauer, Meghan began erasing her dad from her story the moment his reality didn't fit her narrative. The loving father who once raised her became an inconvenient detail. Bauer says this wasn't confusion, it was strategy. She rebuilt her past to fit a new image, not a supported daughter, but a self-made fighter. And that rebrand reached its breaking point during the infamous Oprah interview. That interview was supposed to be Meghan and Harry's masterpiece, a perfectly staged confession to win the world's sympathy. But Bauer claims it blew up in their faces the second people started checking the facts. He found 17 proven inaccuracies. Yes, 17.
Whereas Meghan always has to fight for a place. She has to fight for the spotlight. She has to fight to be seen, and being seen is critical to her. And, she can't, if there's another shooting, she can't fly there as she did.
These weren't little memory slips. They were full-blown contradictions. One of the biggest? Meghan's claim that she and Harry were secretly married 3 days before the royal wedding. The Archbishop himself later confirmed it never happened. There was no secret backyard ceremony, no private vows, nothing. It was pure storytelling. Then came the racial insinuation that someone in the royal family questioned Archie's skin tone. Bauer explains that Meghan deliberately linked that accusation to Archie not receiving a royal title, hoping people would assume the two were connected. But they weren't. The rules for royal titles were written long before Meghan ever joined the family. Archie simply wasn't eligible. It had nothing to do with race. And when Meghan claimed she was denied help when she needed it most, Bauer says the palace had detailed records showing she had full access to doctors, staff, and professionals at all times. To Bauer, the Oprah interview didn't damage the royal family. It shattered Meghan's credibility, and the cracks only deepened during the Australia tour, which he calls the turning point. On camera, it looked like a royal fairy tale.
In California, I can actually sue to see them, but I don't want to do that. And the other thing is, I've done nothing wrong. There's nothing that points to me says I'm a bad guy. As a matter of fact, I'm a really loving father, and she knows that. And there's no excuse for her to treat me this way. No excuse to treat the king that way as well.
Crowds cheering, headlines glowing, photos flawless. But Bauer uncovered something completely different behind the scenes. The smiles were forced, the tension real, and according to him, that trip marked the moment when Meghan's fantasy version of royalty finally collided with the cold, unfiltered reality. Bauer spoke to royal staff who were on that Australia tour, and their stories were absolutely brutal. Multiple insiders said Meghan acted less like a royal representative and more like a Hollywood star demanding red carpet treatment. She reportedly snapped at aides, threw tantrums over schedules, and demanded last-minute changes just to have things her way. And then came the infamous tea-throwing incident. Yes, that one, which left staff stunned and whispering that they had never seen anything like it. But beneath the surface, Bauer says the issue wasn't just behavior. It was mindset. Meghan believed those cheering crowds were there for her alone. In her mind, she was already a global icon.
And she gets into one of the best university colleges of America, Northwestern, because of her education and background. So by no means anything other than a happy childhood, although a broken family.
A modern-day Diana reborn, the true star of the show. But reality hit her hard when she realized she would always rank below William and Catherine. Not because of favoritism or bias, but because of centuries-old royal hierarchy. Bauer says that realization lit the fuse. Meghan didn't want to stand behind anyone. She didn't want to be a supporting act in someone else's story. And she definitely didn't want to be overshadowed by Catherine's effortless grace and public adoration. That, according to Bauer, was when the exit plan quietly began. Long before Netflix, before Oprah, before the tears and televised confessions.
And of course, they're not allowed to come to the dinner after the wedding. I mean, people whom he'd known for years. And even at the wedding of Tommy Inskip in Jamaica, one of the parents who was there told me that Meghan had behaved appallingly. They just couldn't understand why Harry was going out with her. She didn't like the food, she didn't like them.
This was the moment Meghan decided she wanted out, and she'd do it on her terms. And then, Bauer drops an even darker twist. He says one of the biggest betrayals didn't happen on stage. It happened before the cameras even started rolling. While the world watched the Queen's funeral hoping for unity and forgiveness, Bauer claims Harry and Meghan had already finished recording their Netflix attacks. Not drafts, not outlines, fully filmed, edited, and ready for release. When they stepped outside Windsor Castle to greet mourners alongside William and Catherine, the public saw a united front, shared grief, a fragile moment of peace. But behind that image, Bauer says the truth was chilling. The couple standing beside William had already filmed hours of footage filled with accusations, insults, and deeply personal grievances against the very people they were pretending to reconcile with.
I do think that the Australian trip turned their head in a crazy way, although she behaved appallingly during the trip.
Yeah.
But in Harry's view, this was his mother all over again. What Meghan never really understood, probably not even now, is that when she was cheered as a working royal,
he describes it as a cold, calculated performance. Harry shook hands with the crowd while knowing his recorded voice accused Charles of lying, claimed William screamed at him, and blamed the monarchy for breaking his peace of mind. This wasn't confusion, it was strategy. Bauer even says Harry pulled the same stunt at Prince Philip's funeral, acting calm in public while secretly preparing another wave of attacks for his upcoming book and media deals. But the Netflix betrayal hit differently. This time, it wasn't just disloyalty. It was doing it during mourning, standing beside his grieving family, while already plotting the next public blow. Bauer's final verdict is brutal. He says this wasn't pain, it was deception. According to him, Meghan's story isn't built on confidence. It's built on construction, a carefully engineered identity that keeps shifting whenever it benefits her.
Meghan believed she was as important to the monarchy as Princess Diana, you write in the book. And her visit to Australia in October 2018 only boosted that view. The more Harry drew parallels with his mother, and the more Meghan must have been convinced of her importance to the monarchy. Do you still think she's that delusional?
Over the years, Bauer says she's reinvented herself again and again, changing her image, her tone, even her symbolism, all to stay in control of how the world sees her. And here's where it gets even deeper. Bauer claims Meghan started modeling herself after Princess Diana long before the public caught on. From the fashion and jewelry to the emotional interviews and body language, she built an entire image that echoed Diana's legacy, the misunderstood woman fighting against the system. But Bauer's research uncovered something that left even insiders shocked. Allegedly, Meghan and Harry once approached Earl Spencer, Diana's brother, asking if they could use the Spencer surname, and not as a tribute, but as their official family name. According to Bauer, Meghan believed Mountbatten-Windsor didn't fit her brand or her children's image. She wanted Spencer because she knew exactly what it represented: tragedy, prestige, legacy, and emotional power recognized across the globe.
And what I really thought at the end of it as well was this, which I think is a very, very pertinent point. When they came across for the Queen's funeral, and there was that amazing scene outside the castle of meeting the well-wishers in the walk, there was always talk of reconciliation. Mm-hmm. Charles and William and Kate go one side, Harry and Meghan the other side, smiling and all the rest of it. But at that time, William didn't know that Harry and Meghan had already recorded their poison for Netflix. It was already edited. All the stuff that we heard today about Charles lying, about William screaming and shouting, was in the can, was being edited. And they duplicitly did not reveal what they were going to do.
But Earl Spencer said no, immediately and firmly. And Bauer interprets that refusal as a silent warning. The Spencer family didn't want their name tied to Meghan's future controversies or to a marriage that, according to insiders, already looked unstable behind closed doors. This wasn't about honoring Diana, it was about borrowing her myth. To Bauer, Meghan's attempts to mirror Diana weren't touching, they were unsettling. He says she wanted to capture Diana's light without carrying what made Diana truly beloved: humility, empathy, and genuine service. The collapse of Meghan's image, Bauer says, wasn't sudden. It was slow, public, and impossible to stop.
In Meghan's mind, she is Diana.
Yes.
I mean, Diana Spencer is Meghan Spencer. And that was all part of her imagination, that somehow she could inherit the glow of her dead mother-in-law. So I think that was another reason for Charles to say no.
After years of emotional interviews, dramatic photo ops, and endless claims of mistreatment, the world started doing something Meghan never expected. They began fact-checking. Hollywood was first to cool off. Producers, agents, and PR teams quietly distanced themselves. Nobody wanted to risk royal connections or be caught in her constant whirl of drama. Then came the media shift. Magazines that once worshipped her began publishing uncomfortable truths. Vanity Fair, The Cut, The Hollywood Reporter, even outlets that used to defend her stopped repeating her stories without proof. Spotify ended their podcast deal with a cutting statement. Netflix reportedly scaled back future collaborations. Archewell's impact numbers dropped sharply, and their charity work started raising more questions than praise. And the public? They turned fast. Polls in the US and the UK hit record lows, and in Australia, the place Meghan thought she'd won over, audiences openly rejected her image altogether.
Meghan, because when she phoned up the two senators to campaign for women's maternity pay, she said, "Hello, this is Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex."
Yeah,
I mean, she plays the royal card the whole time. So I don't think that would play well in the election for Congress or even the Senate. So I think they've got to realign their image. I mean, I think in any case, they're burning out their royal status pretty fast now.
Bauer says none of this downfall happened because of racism, jealousy, or royal conspiracies. It happened because eventually, the performance ran out of script. It all came crashing down because people finally started connecting the dots. The stories didn't line up, the facts kept changing, and the emotions became a weapon, a way to deflect blame from the one person controlling the whole narrative. Each contradiction chipped away at the illusion until there was nothing left to hide behind. Meghan and Harry didn't lose public support overnight. It disappeared piece by piece. Every new revelation, every inconsistency, every moment Tom Bower pulled back the curtain just made the world see more of what they weren't supposed to.
So I think they've got a real identity crisis, which will be resolved in the next few months, one way or another. And I don't think it can be to the good. But the point about it is, you see, they're notorious.
And according to him, we're now watching the final act unfold, faster than ever. After years of interviews, private leaks, and quiet sources from inside palace walls, Bower saves his harshest judgment for last. And it's devastating. He says Meghan has reached a point where no new story can rescue her. Not another sit-down interview, not a shiny rebrand, not a new lifestyle project or tearful confession. The damage is already done. The public has seen too much. The contradictions are everywhere. The manipulation too blatant. According to Bower, Meghan's downfall wasn't caused by a single mistake. It was caused by repetition. The same moves again and again.
And she wanted the cover and control of the content, and they had a huge argument. And that meant that he was really finished with her. He'd had enough of her prima donna behavior, and that's why he's dumped her. But also, I mean, from his point of view, what does she now bring? There isn't anything original. There's no great sales point there. And I think you've got to look at something else. You mentioned at the beginning Sam Kashner.
Rewriting history, shifting blame, playing the victim when confronted, and turning against anyone who wouldn't play along. Bower says what we're seeing now isn't random, it's predictable. The media deals are fading out, Hollywood is backing away, royal ties are gone, and public sympathy has completely dried up. And that final "I was wronged" card she's played for years, it doesn't work anymore. But Bower's final statement cuts the deepest. He says Meghan's biggest problem isn't the press, the palace, or even Harry. It's that she built an entire empire on a version of herself that simply couldn't survive the truth. Once the facts came out and the stories fell apart, there was nothing left to protect the image she'd built. Bower warns that the next year will be the most revealing yet, not because Meghan speaks, but because the world finally stops listening. So if you want to keep up as this story keeps unfolding, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and stay tuned, because the truth isn't finished coming out yet.